Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Paddock Project. What a weekend. We are certainly back from summer break. Zandvoort did not disappoint, and I was there, and it was the time of my life. I think besides Vegas last year, this is the first time I haven't had to adjust to a different time zone for a race. It really makes a difference. I took the train from Paris to Amsterdam, was in my own bed at a reasonable hour after the race on Sunday, and I have to say, this is one of my favorite race experiences ever, which I'll get into all the details of that, of course, but I'm just buzzing and I don't feel that post Grand Prix exhaustion that is sort of the norm when I go to Grand Prix. Like, truly, when I get back from Vegas, every race, I need a full week to recover. And no, I'm feeling great. So, in this episode, I will, of course, be talking about the racing, the chaos, the multiple DNFs, penalties, whether or not I think those were fair, Isack Hadjar's first podium, lots of other great highlights, and of course, all the F1 Academy action this weekend. We had two great races and lots to unpack there. But first, let's dive into some news, recap what the experience was like in person, because there is a lot to talk about. So, for some news, I know last episode I was sort of talking hypothetically about Valtteri Bottas and Checo Perez driving for Cadillac because it seemed kind of like a foregone conclusion, but it hadn't been announced yet. It has been announced. The Cadillac drivers for next year are officially confirmed. It is indeed Valtteri and Checo returning to the grid in what seems to be a team of second chances. They have hundreds of Grand Prix starts between them, multiple podiums, race wins, and just a whole load of experience that I think Cadillac was very smart to capitalize on for its entry in a time where everything is new, not just for them, but for everyone. With a set of new regulations, I think it's going to be really important to have experience. So that is key. It was a bit of the worst kept secret in the paddock. I think it seemed like a foregone conclusion for a long time. We, of course, had Valtteri Bottas sort of teasing stuff online for quite a long time, but we did finally get the answer to what's next. My thoughts on the announcement. So, really interesting. They did it this past Tuesday. Monday, I guess, was a bank holiday, but we're back from summer break. We finally got one silly season announcement, and it was a good one. It was Cadillac. They had Keanu Reeves sort of do it. Their first reel, I think, that they posted with the announcement was the phone ringing, and then Keanu Reeves being like, "We've been waiting for you." It felt very American. Obviously, they are an American team. They also went on Good Morning America, the drivers did, to talk about their return to Formula One and driving for Cadillac, which was interesting. Bottas, of course, posted his American flag picture, kind of surfing or whatever board he was on. When it originally came out, I was like, this is 100% an AI photo. And then, of course, we got the footage of him like actually in the water with the flag. I still kind of think AI was used in some capacity. The photo is just too good or too perfect. Like, maybe they just took that footage and ingested that into AI and said, create a better version or a perfect version of this. Or maybe they actually got the picture and they just edited the heck out of it. But it's a funny picture. And I love that Bottas was able to just drop that without the word Cadillac in there anywhere. And everybody just knew what it meant. And I love that this Finnish man who doesn't have a drop of American blood in his body, to my knowledge, is representing America. And there's no better person for it, in my mind, on the grid right now. So very happy for Bottas to come back. I felt like the announcement was we got a little bit more behind the scenes. It felt a little bit more casual, which I loved. They posted a lot of stories of, them behind the scenes, like refreshing the fact that the announcement had come out, them going to Good Morning America. I love the fact that teams can kind of do whatever they want with this, and it's a bit of a blank slate. So I'm very excited to see how Cadillac leans into or crafts their team identity, being American, what that means for marketing, how they use Bottas and Checo. I talked a little bit last episode about my thoughts of the dynamic between them. I still think that's going to be interesting. They are obviously both very experienced, but I think they will probably be duking it out for who's going to be the better driver. There might not need to be a number one driver if they're not, gunning for a championship. But I still think with two veterans signed to this team, a rookie is going to make sense and enter the picture at some point. So they're going to have to keep one and drop one, I imagine, at some point. So going to be an interesting dynamic, but marketing wise, I think they have gold on their hands. The only sponsor that Cadillac has announced is Tommy Hilfiger, which neither Bottas nor Checo wore Tommy to the announcement. So that felt like a bit of a missed opportunity to me. They both were kind of dressed very neutral. So I don't know, maybe that was intentional, but I think they should have worn Tommy to the announcement. The other big piece of news, McLaren MasterCard for 2026. McLaren finally has a title sponsor. They were the last holdout of not having a title sponsor. Every other team, I believe, has one. You know, Mercedes AMG Petronas, Oracle Red Bull Racing, Aston Martin Aramco, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm super happy for them. It's rumored to be $100 million a year, which is not a bad amount of money for that team who seems to be collecting sponsors like Horcruxes, but good for them. I think this partnership makes a ton of sense. The alliteration, the brand colors, the logo blending in seamlessly. And back in Vegas last year, I went to a panel with Zach Brown and Raja Rajamnar, who is the CMO of MasterCard. And they did kind of hint at it. They were talking about how great a ring, there would be to McLaren MasterCard title sponsorship and team. And I just think the partnership makes a ton of sense. I really respect what MasterCard has done so far. I think their sort of priceless campaigns are really great. The fact that they've brought fans to races, it's a good choice. But yeah, $100 million a year is not bad. The rumor is that they spent almost a tenth of that on the launch event with Calvin Harris. Now, obviously, that's just a rumor, but that was the Wednesday before Zandvoort, and it looked like a fun event. So one thing I'm curious about is the timing. I know we're just back from summer break, but with the Cadillac announcement, with the racing and the sort of chaos this weekend, I'm kind of surprised they dropped it on Wednesday. I feel like it got a little bit lost in the mix, and that maybe was intentional. I don't know, but I'm surprised they wouldn't have announced it at a race where they have like much more presence, much more sponsor activation, like do something big for a race weekend. And, maybe they'll do that later in the season, but it was interesting timing to me. I'm just so curious to be a fly on the wall in these conversations. Like, was MasterCard McLaren ever a part of the discussion, or was Zach Brown like, that's a non-starter, we're only doing McLaren MasterCard in terms of the order of the names? Like, how do these things get decided, and who decides them? I just find that so interesting. But kudos to McLaren and kudos to MasterCard in what I think is going to be a great partnership. So diving into the race experience, I spent almost the whole weekend with F1 Academy, which was an absolute dream. I've said it before, but I think seeing their growth from Austin 2023, which we worked with them at in their first ever co-located race with Formula One, seeing it from then to now, and the growth has just been out of this world. And I just really love all the drivers and all the team members. Like, they're so kind, they're so fun, they're having a good time, they're working hard, they're pushing hard. I got some great quality time with Susie this weekend. I met her on Friday and got that picture, which I cannot believe the number of comments who said we look like mother-daughter in that photo. And some of you also said sister, which is probably more accurate because she looks incredible. Even if she's like a decade plus older than I am. But yeah, I loved that. And then I also got to spend Saturday night with her on a boat with TeamViewer, which I'll talk a little bit about that too. But yeah, it was just an incredible weekend. I spent a lot of it with F1 Academy, a lot of it with TeamViewer, who sponsored the wildcard car for F1 Academy. And then Tommy Hilfiger was kind enough to gift me all of these incredible outfits. I couldn't believe it. I had like 6 bags. I went to their actual headquarters in Amsterdam and got to do sort of a styling fitting situation. Alba had been there earlier in the day. Alba is the driver that they sponsor in F1 Academy. And as a reminder, Tommy also they did the F1 movie. They're the first announced partner of Cadillac. They, of course, have worked with Mercedes and Lewis and George for many, many years. And so they have their hands in so many different areas of Formula One. So it really felt like a pinch me moment to be there. And then just to get all of these clothes and be able to wear them over the weekend was so, so kind and just such a dream. I felt like an absolute princess. So thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Igor, for being the one to style me. He had all of these like different outfits picked out and they were all perfect. I'm like, how do you do this? The eye that you have. I feel like I learned a lot about fashion and how you put different pieces and colors and textures together just from going through that experience. So all of that to say, very cool. So media day was on Thursday. And did a couple of interviews in the paddock. It was pouring for part of that day. And we were all kind of hunched under the garage tents in F1 Academy watching this rain just absolutely pour down. I got to talk to Alba, got to hang out at the fan zone and build sort of the Lego cars and just explore the track. I think it's always helpful to get to the track a little bit early ahead of the weekend to just every track is different. And so getting to know it was helpful. Zandvoort did feel quite compact to me. I'll talk a little bit more about the fan experience in a few minutes, but it was good to get the lay of the land. Friday, I spent in the Paddock Club with TeamViewer, which was really cool. I love tech in Formula One, so to be able to work with TeamViewer and that kind of sponsor is always the dream. That's when I got to meet Susie in the Paddock Club. But the Paddock Club had its own sort of F1 Academy area where they had the Charlotte Tilbury glam stations, the Wella hair. You could get your hair done. Of course, like views of the track. We were overlooking the pit lane, which was super cool. Lots of TVs, amazing food. Like the Paddock Club is an insane place in Formula One. So it was really nice to be able to spend a decent amount of time there. I then got to watch all the different practice sessions happening on Friday, which was very cool. Went to the F1 Academy paddock where I got to talk to Esme, who was the wild card driver in the TeamViewer car. She's from the Netherlands, so this was her home race. I got to talk to her and create some content with her, which was very nice. And the coolest thing about TeamViewer, and I can't believe I haven't said it to this point, but what they did for their car was they had all of these faces of incredible women in sport and motorsport on the car. So the car that Esme was driving around had a lot of pictures on it, and mine was on there, which was such an honor and so cool to be amongst incredible, incredible women. But the whole point of the campaign was that visibility is so crucial in motorsport and really in any industry. To be able to see that women are playing a part and playing a role is so crucial. And the number that Esme was driving, 86, there was a little percentage sign at the end of it because apparently 86% of people believe that visibility is key to advance women in motorsport or really in any industry. My question is, who are the 14% who don't think that that's the case? But I digress. We'll take the 86% where we can get it, I guess. But anyway, that was so cool. Really shout out to TeamViewer. I feel like everybody should be taking notes from them on how to run a campaign and how to bring sort of more visibility and more fun into this sort of thing. And I think it was just really special for everyone to see their pictures, to see people's pictures that they know. And it probably meant a lot to Esme as she told me driving around with those faces and that support. I then got to talk to the Red Bull F1 Academy drivers and we played some fun games. They're so fun together and they seem to have such great time. They share apartments on race weekends, I learned. So they're like real friends. And I love that for them. And then Friday night, I got to go to an Off to the Races dinner at an incredible restaurant, DeCos. But Off to the Races is a female-focused Formula One travel company or agency, and they bring women together over races to do some really cool stuff. And I wish I had done more of their itinerary because it was just amazing. You know, they had a full day in Amsterdam, going to the Van Gogh Museum, doing flower arrangements, and then, of course, going to the track and watching the racing. They had a meet and greet with Tina Hausman and some incredible drinks and dinners and whatnot. So I was very lucky to be able to go to that dinner on Friday. And DeCos is an amazing restaurant. I think I'm saying it right. I'm not sure, but it's like sort of the original farm to table concept where they grow everything either on site or very locally. And it's just beautifully done. So highly recommend if you make it to Amsterdam and if you haven't been. So I also want to talk about the fan experience. The logistics of this race were so seamless. Like most people stay in Amsterdam, it seems, but getting from Amsterdam to the track, the train runs every 5 minutes. Yes, it is called the Max Express because we are in the Netherlands and it is his home race and there's orange everywhere and everyone's a Max fan and everybody's wearing Red Bull. And I love that. I think I just absolutely love home race and home driver pride. There's just a different level of energy to it. And even if you're not a fan of that driver, I think you can't help but appreciate how much spirit there is around it. So the logistics could not have been easier. I'm used to going to Formula One races and literally fighting for my life to get in and out of the track. And I know many people who've been to races feel the same way. And So to be able to go on this train that takes 30 minutes, and then you walk through this very cute town where all of the apartments are decorated, and there are flags outside, and you have kids dressed up, and they're selling things, and there are signs everywhere for Max, and there are like DJ booths, and it was so cool to see, and I loved being able to walk through that, but it couldn't have been easier. It's a very, very heavily Dutch fan base. There's, like I was saying, so much orange, so much Red Bull. Everything is in Dutch. And obviously, we're in the Netherlands, so I wouldn't necessarily expect anything different, but like it's very much catered to the Dutch fans. All the signs are in Dutch. Like everybody speaks Dutch to you first when you go up to buy concessions or whatever. And I love that. I think that's really amazing. And I have always said that going to Grand Prix and traveling to Grand Prix is sort of like a portal into a different culture and a different world. And Formula One races, because they're mostly put on by local promoters, are just kind of a microcosm of that culture and that experience in that world. And I wouldn't want to have it any other way. I think it's so special to be able to experience that. It did make me a little bit sad because next year is the last for the foreseeable future. 2026 is the last Zandvoort race for some time, and there were a lot of like the final lap posters around for next year. So I highly recommend, if you're able to swing it, to go in 2026 if you haven't been, because it really is an incredible race. And as you can see, the track just is conducive to fun, chaotic racing. Other things about the fan experience: the fan zone is incredible. There's so much to do. There's the Lego stuff. There's the pit stop challenges. There's the Ferris wheel, which I went on, which was so cool. It cost, I think, €8 a person, which wasn't that bad. Honestly, I kind of expected more, but you get a view of the entire track, and it's just really, really fun and really cool. And it felt like an absolute party. Like there's so many people in the fan zone. There's a huge stage, of course, and music and DJs and tons of great food. It was just a really, really good vibe. I also did a meetup with some of you, which was really cool. People were kind of from all over. We had someone from Aruba, someone from the Netherlands, people from a lot of different places in the US. And I just love kind of seeing everybody from all over the world. So thank you for that. When I get into talking about the racing very shortly, I'll kind of talk about where I was sitting and what the vibe of that was. But just a couple more things about the experience. On Saturday night, went on a boat through the canals with Team Viewer and Susie Wolf, who was doing a Q&A, which was really cool. And there were some incredible quotes, which I will post on Instagram. Maybe I have already at this point if you're listening to this episode, but I'm going to post some of the quotes that she said, because I learned a lot that I didn't know about her, and that I feel like she doesn't maybe say as much in the media. But one of the fun facts that I didn't know was that her mom met her dad when she bought her first motorbike from him, which is so badass. Like, of course, Susie Wolf's mom met her husband buying a motorbike from him, like that's just absolutely legendary. But she talked a lot about what it has taken to get F1 Academy off the ground, some of the battles that she's had to fight, some of the battles that she's still fighting and wants to make sure come to fruition. Power steering is a big thing. She's like, we absolutely need power steering in junior categories, because if people coming up the ladder don't have that experience and they're not getting used to the types of challenges and different muscle movements and things that Formula One drivers have because they have power steering, it's a huge missed opportunity. So I thought that was really interesting. And she actually said that she's lost that battle recently, but I'm sure she's still fighting the good fight, and hopefully they'll get there. But yeah, she just talked, of course, a lot about being a woman and what it means for women in motorsport and different things. But yeah, check out Instagram and TikTok for some more of those quotes, because I thought they were really fascinating. And one thing she did say was that in Vegas, they're going to be having an F1 Academy grandstand. I'm not sure if that's been announced yet or if those tickets are on sale, but definitely look out for that. And it also sounds to me like F1 Academy may be putting out merch soon. So anyone listening, which many of you I know have been asking for F1 Academy merch or something to represent F1 Academy and women in motorsport, I do believe something may be coming. I don't know what it is, but keep an eye on the space. And last thing, just about the experience, Amsterdam overall, I had never been. It's an incredible city. The canals are so beautiful. It's really got a lot of energy. I absolutely loved it. And I stayed at the Kimpton DeWitt Hotel, which, let me tell you, was absolutely perfect. I asked Alexandra, who runs Off to the Races, that female travel group I was talking about, where they were staying, because I was like, A, I really trust your judgment, and B, I know you've picked a great hotel. So I asked her where I should stay. And she said they were staying at this hotel. And I was like, okay, that's the only place I want to stay. So it was amazing. So central, literally a 4-minute walk to the train station. Couldn't have been easier. They were so kind, great big room. They gave us treats upon arrival and just treated us so well. So if you go to Amsterdam, I highly recommend the Kimpton DeWitt as a hotel. We also got to have dinner, a complimentary dinner there at Celia, which I don't know, maybe some hotel restaurants are good, but I feel like in my mind I have this conception that maybe it's a misconception that hotel restaurants often aren't very good, or like that's not where you'd want to go. That's not where the locals go, so you'd want to go elsewhere. It was so good. So good. And they had a really fun bar, Super Lion or whatever. So yeah, highly recommend. Now, at long last, let us get into the racing. So, quali, sunny. We were expecting rain all weekend. It was sunny, but it was so windy. There were a lot of offs in practice. It's a punishing track with the gravel. And so there was a lot of excitement. Q1, we had both Haas's, Hulkenberg, Colapinto, and Stroll out. Stroll did crash. Sitting right by that crash, there was only a yellow flag. He was able to drive off and keep going, but obviously back into the pits, and then wasn't able to resume the session. I was sitting in one of the general admission areas just because I wanted to kind of like stand in the dunes, be around everybody else. It was really cool. Then Q2 out, we had Kimi Antonelli, Yuki Tsunoda, Bortoleto, Gasly, and Albon. Both Racing Bulls were into Q3 and Yuki was not, so that was tough. And after the way practice went, I felt a little bit relieved that both Ferraris made it to Q3, although not that it really mattered in the end. And then Q3, we had a Piastri pole, Norris, Max, then Isack, Hadjar, then George, then the Ferraris. It was a new track record set by Oscar, and Lando was only 0.012 seconds behind, but I was so happy for Hadjar qualifying P4, and he and Max were on the second row, and I loved the picture of young Isack and Max that VCarb and Red Bull posted. Just a very exciting time. So for the race, overall loved it. It really just delivered chaos. I sat in the dunes again, different dunes this time, kind of overlooking. It wasn't the hairpin, but it was a pretty good corner. So I got to see a decent amount of the track. And sitting in the dunes apparently was the thing to do this race, as we saw with Charles and Lando, as it would turn out. But it was so fun to just be around everybody. Of course, every time Max went around the track, there was cheering, but people also really liked McLaren there. I don't know if it's the orange synergy or what it is, but yeah, people really seem to like McLaren and Lando especially. We did not end up getting much rain, despite hearing a lot about it a lot on the radio and beforehand. Though I will say, being there in person, it did feel rainy. It definitely came down later in the day. I was glad to have my poncho, which I'm sad I had to throw that away because it's kind of a great accessory. For the race, some chaos. 3 DNFs, 3 safety cars. So we had both Ferraris at the same corner, turn 3. Hamilton due to a spin out, which I can't believe I witnessed. And then Charles after contact with Kimi. And then finally Lando with a mechanical failure late in the race. So maybe let's talk about those first. Hamilton, I don't even know what to say. Just a really sad time. And his radio message said it all. Like, I'm so sorry, guys. And he also has a 5-place grid penalty for Monza for not slowing down under yellow flag conditions, which it's just insult after injury. But yeah, that was Hamilton's own doing, spinning out, a driver who has so much experience in the wet and at a track like this. And it was just really surprising to see and really sad. So not happy about that. Then for Charles, Kimi took out Charles, and there's really no other way to describe it, unfortunately. And it is unfortunate that it's the second top driver he's done this to, if we remember back to Max. But Charles pitted to cover off Kimi, which was questionable strategy in the first place. And then Kimi just completely misjudged the move into turn 3. That resulted in a 10-second penalty for causing a collision. it's amazing that Kimi made it out of that relatively unscathed. But I do appreciate how gracious Leclerc was about it after the race. There does seem to be somewhat of a soft spot for Kimi in a way that maybe doesn't exist for other drivers. Like, imagine if that had been Liam that took Charles out, which we'll talk about Carlos and Liam in a minute. But yeah, not great. It just felt like a very classic rookie mistake from Kimi, and I do hope that he continues to learn. There were lots of memes about him losing his Italian citizenship and the fact that it's Monza next weekend and he's got to, hide from the Tifosi and all of that. So I don't know. I give Kimi a little bit of grace as a rookie. Like, I think some people were talking about, oh, is Kimi going to get demoted or is this the end? Like, absolutely not. Kimi is a rookie. It's his rookie season. Yes, he's made, I think, a couple mistakes that he could have avoided and maybe learned from a bit more. Like after the Max incident, he probably shouldn't have had this happen with Charles, but Kimi has proven that there's so much potential there. There's less of a ceiling than there might be with other rookies. Like he's got the raw speed, he's got the talent, he's got the hunger. He's just got to sort of like figure out how it all fits and works together. But yeah, I think Mercedes has invested way too much in him to demote him or whatever. I think he will definitely be in the car next year and getting used to a new set of regulations and go from there. Yeah. Anyway, an unfortunate incident with Kimi and Charles, and then Lando. Retirement due to reliability is just so depressing, particularly given how tight the championship is and it being no fault of his own. It's just really unfortunate to see, and it has felt like the momentum has been in Lando's favor. I think he had 3 of the last 4 race wins, so it's been a good run for Lando, and obviously the championship is incredibly tight. So to get 0 points while your teammate gets 25 due to no fault of your own is just really sad. He made some comments after the race about how he feels more free to maybe just go for it because he's got a little less to lose. I don't know if I fully agree with that, but hopefully he can just like keep it up and take some calculated risks and do what he can to keep himself in the fight. This is by no means the championship over. We still have 9 races to go. So I guess that is a silver lining, is that this, well, fingers crossed it doesn't happen again, but it's not like this is happening with 1 race to go and it's decided the championship. Like Lando does have several more races to outperform, prove himself. Maybe this will also happen to Oscar Piastri. Who knows? It just goes to show that even teams that seem to be untouchable and so reliable can have these moments of failure. It's just unfortunate that this happened in such a fun championship battle, and it sort of feels like it tilts the scale in favor of Oscar a little bit more. Of course, there's still a chance for Lando, and you never know what can happen, but I do imagine he feels a little bit resigned to what probably feels like the likely outcome of him coming second to his teammate. But we shall see what happens. I hope he can pick his head up and come back strong. Winning Monza would be really exciting for him. But speaking of these DNFs, I think seeing Charles and Lando sitting in the sand dunes is just peak F1 perfection. Like the fact that these drivers are climbing out of their cars and going to sit in the sand dunes just stranded is crazy to me. It's so sad. The photos of them are just like, it's honestly cinematic. I can't believe it's real life. And how did Charles get a phone? I'm sure someone has gotten to the bottom of that at this point, but it's not like he was driving with his phone in his pocket. So maybe it was his photographer who lent it to him or one of the marshals or something. But it's just, I can't believe how long he was there for and just watching the race. And I don't know, just very sad, but hilarious content. So those were the DNFs. We also have to discuss another one of the major penalties of the race, the Carlos and Liam incident. So Carlos and Liam came together. Carlos got on the radio furious. He was like, what in the world was that? Why is it always this guy? And then he's the one who gets nailed with the penalty. So he's complaining about Liam and, how it's his fault. And then the stewards say, actually, no, not only are you getting a 10-second penalty, but you're getting 2 penalty points on your license. And there's been a lot of discourse about this penalty and the fact that Carlos wanted to go appeal the decision. Apparently they refused the appeal. I'm not sure if that's still the status, but I think the question is, was that penalty fair? I mean, in my mind, absolutely not. Like first of all, that seemed like a racing incident. Yes, Carlos was coming in on the outside, but Liam sort of like drove into him. And yes, Carlos wasn't ahead at the apex, but like there was enough room for Liam to give Carlos a little bit more space there. And so I think if anything, it was a racing incident, but giving 10 seconds and 2 penalty points on Carlos's license just feels way out of the realm of anything that feels realistic or possible, especially Kimi, who like sabotaged Charles's race, 100% his fault, also got a 10-second penalty. So it's just very confusing to me the way some of these things are handed out. It's also Carlos's birthday today, the poor guy. And I just felt bad because Carlos had done an incredible job on Saturday to qualify really well. He outqualified his teammate Alex Albon, so it must sting extra that Albon had that incredible result of P5. So I feel for Carlos, especially because it's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride so far in the Williams, and I just want him to find his footing. And after all of that depression, let's talk about some of the highlights, because the best highlight of them all was that Isack Hadjar got his first podium. And the unbridled joy of that on the radio is something you just cannot recreate. Like, I just want to bottle that up and save it for a rainy day and just open it and hear Isack Hadjar screaming his lungs off about this podium, because it was so well deserved. And yes, of course, you can say without Lando's retirement, he might not have been on the podium, but for him to qualify in a Racing Bull P4, be fighting the Ferraris and Mercedes, and then also keeping within range of Max to even potentially pass him or get up to him on merit, and be in a position to pick up that podium when it was made available to him through Lando's retirement, like, he absolutely deserves it. An incredible, incredible showing. And I think he's the 5th youngest driver on podium. And it's just really exciting to me and heartfelt, the fact that we saw where he started this season, where he spun out on the formation lap in his first race in Australia in wet conditions, crying, being consoled by Anthony Hamilton, Helmut Marko calling it embarrassing and all of that, just to go from that to a podium, a little over halfway through the season in his rookie year. But also, he's just incredibly consistent. He's always getting into Q3. He's often beating his teammate. He's often beating Yuki in the Red Bull. And so it's just been amazing. I think a lot of people were talking about Kimi at the beginning of the season because Kimi did have some really great showing, but I think Isack has made a case for rookie of the year for sure for himself. And I'm really happy to see how he's performed. And now the question for him is, will he get the Red Bull seat next year? Should he? If he does, should he take it? I think, yes, absolutely, he should take it. You're not going to stay in the junior team. Maybe you would do so mid-season because that kind of throws things off. And we've seen how temperamental that Red Bull car is. And even Max, has trouble with it sometimes, but sometimes I don't know how he figures out how to drive that thing. But yeah, I think Isack would definitely take it, or should definitely take it next year in a new car. VCarb is never going to beat Red Bull, right? Unless something absolutely insane is happening, just because it's the junior team. So I think Isack should take it. The question of will he get the seat? It feels to me like yes. I think if you think about the options, Yuki has not had a great run of it so far this season. That said, Yuki still is a great driver. It's a really difficult car. Yuki was doing great things in the V-Carb that Isack is also doing. So I think it's a little hard to compare apples to apples in terms of Yuki's results in the Red Bull right now versus what Isack is doing in a much more predictable, much more manageable car. So I don't know if you are thinking about Isack versus Yuki. I think that's a little bit of a tougher toss up. Now, of course, Isack getting a podium and all the excitement around that, and the fact that he is a rookie and doesn't have 4 years of driving under his belt like Yuki does. I think 4+ years. I don't know. If it were me, I would probably give it to Isack over Yuki, but I don't think it's as much of a slam dunk decision as recency bias might suggest with this podium. But I think I would still give it to Isack. A couple other highlights. Ollie Berman, he drove from pit lane to P6. Haas took a bit of a gamble on the strategy. They waited to pit their drivers for a really long time, but it paid off with Ocon also in the points. So bravo to Ollie and Ocon and to Haas. Speaking of Haas, they let me ask a couple questions of their race engineers. I've been trying to talk to Laura Mueller forever, so I think they were just like, okay, send us some questions and we'll just do it all in one go. So anyway, I sent in a question about how they make the decision between the driver and the data, especially when those things are at odds. Like if a driver is telling you something, but the data is telling you something else, which I feel like we hear on the radio sometimes. And we question like why a team is making this decision when the driver is saying something totally different. But they had some really thoughtful answers. I posted that on Instagram and I think on TikTok as well. So definitely check that out if you haven't, because I think it's really, really interesting. Some more highlights. Yuki scored points for only, I think, the fourth time at Red Bull. So very exciting for him. Aston Martin had a quietly decent race. Now, I say quiet because they weren't talked about a ton, but of course, Alonso had that very unquiet radio about, swearing, and they always put him into traffic and he doesn't know whatever they're asking him. He was being a little temperamental there, but they did score double points, which was very exciting. And then Albon, which I mentioned earlier as well, just driving from way back there to P5 and what was an incredible result. So MVP, can't give it to anyone other than Isack Hadjar. I mean, driver of the day, first podium in F1, really due to his own merit, and so happy for him. I already talked about this, so I won't belabor the point, but it's just one of the happier things in Formula One. And I'm so glad we had that to distract from all of the depression surrounding Ferrari and Lando. LVP, talked about this a lot as well, but I think I just have to give it to Kimi. It's just, I think the first mistake driving into Max and taking out a world champion was, a rookie mistake. That was bad enough, but he apologized. Max was okay with it and, quite gracious about it. But then to do that again to Charles and feel like you didn't really learn from the mistake and just kind of misjudge that, I feel like Kimi deserves the LVP on that one. Now, all that to say, I really want Kimi to bounce back, and I do think he's an incredibly talented driver. I'm a huge fan of him. He's incredibly young, so he does deserve a little bit of grace, I think. But yeah, this is an unfortunate happening. And for the standings, so we have Oscar Piastri, number 1 with 309, Lando Norris, 275. So I think they're 34 points apart now, which is too bad. Max Verstappen, 205, George Russell, 184, Charles Leclerc, 151, Lewis, 109, Kimi Antonelli, 64, tied with Alex Albon. Then Nico Hulkenberg and Isack Hadjar are also tied for 37. So Isack has now gotten himself into the top 10. For constructors, McLaren running away with it, 584, Ferrari 260, Mercedes 248. So those two are very close. Red Bull 214, Williams 80, Aston Martin 62, Racing Bulls 60, Kick Sauber 51, Haas 44, and Alpine 20. Now for F1 Academy, 2 very eventful races. There's still a lot to play for in the championship. Dorian is still in the lead, and coming into this weekend, Chloe Chambers was P2, but with a heartbreak in race 2, which I'll get to, and then a dominant performance from Maya all weekend. Maya now has claimed the second spot. So there's going to be a lot to fight for. And Dorian definitely is still in the lead, but has to be kind of watching out of the corners of her eyes and looking behind her, because those two are fast approaching. The F1 Academy paddock was just the absolute place to be all weekend. The crowds coming in and out was so incredible to see. And I think, as I said, maybe in Miami too, I've just been blown away by how many men and how many young boys are also in the paddock. And I absolutely love to see that. Of course, I love to see women and girls going in as well, but it's nice to see that everybody is rallying around this sport and they're getting so many more eyes and excitement and engagement around it. And the paddock is open to fans. So you can see all the cars and the drivers, you can get their autographs. You really get an up close and personal feel as a fan. So I love that. For race 1, this was a reverse grid race. It was lots of fun racing, lots of overtakes. We watched this in the F1 Academy paddock with the families, which was so cool. And the reason we got to do that was Maya Vogue's father was an absolute gem. He saw us in the paddock and he was like, "Oh, where do you want to watch? Like, come watch with us." And he showed us where to watch, and his like all of Maya Vogue's family was there with their like shirts dedicated to Maya, which was so cute. And then all the other families were there too. So that was very cool. That was an experience that you don't get every day. So to be able to watch what the family is cheering on their daughters was very special. Maya's family had a lot to celebrate, of course, with all of her overtakes. Nina Gotteman started on pole, and it was her birthday, and she managed to hang on for the win. And she's a Dutch driver, so this was a home win for her. Just she was very emotional. It was so exciting. Leah Block, P2, she finally got her first podium in F1 Academy. Such a long time coming. She's had, a transition from rally to single seaters, which is not an easy transition to make. And I think it's incredible to see that pay off. And we also got to watch this with her mom. Her mom was there, who was just like very excited and nervous watching. And of course, the Hello Sunshine cameras were glued to her the entire time. So I think that will be a fun storyline to watch in the next season. Esme, the team viewer wildcard driver, also Dutch, she started from the pit lane, unfortunately, due to tire pressure infringement, no fault of her own, but she was able to climb back up the rankings, I believe, to P13. So very exciting there. And then the other highlight, or low light, I should say, in race one was Tina Hausman's crash and retirement, which was a bummer. For race two, so this was the heartbreak for Chloe Chambers, whose car didn't start. She was on the grid and it just didn't start. And that is a really unfortunate thing for the championship because she's number two, or she was number two heading into this weekend. So I hate to see that. Leah then pulled up into Chloe Chambers' spot and then had to reverse back into her own grid box, but wasn't quite lined up. So she got penalized for a false start with a 10-second penalty, which was frustrating. And then Ella Lloyd as well also had a slight roll forward, so got a 5-second penalty for a false start. But incredible and dominant win from Maya Vogue. We had a double Dutch win this weekend. Maya, Nina, and then also all the Dutch women scored points, with Esme being the first wildcard driver this season to score points. We also had a great podium from Alicia and P2, and Alba had an amazing overtake in the last lap to get up there as well. So the standings, the top five in the F1 Academy Championship as it stands after Zandvoort, Florian Pain at 127, Maya Vogue 107, Chloe Chambers 93, Ella Lloyd 84, and Alicia Palmowski 73. So lots to fight for. And I believe Singapore is up next for them, so stay tuned for that. But I know this was a little bit of a longer episode, had to recap the full in-person experience, and I'm excited for Monza this weekend. I will not be there in person, but very excited to watch it and see if Ferrari can bounce back at home. So fingers crossed for that, and thank you as always for listening.